right. I'll answer this one. I shouldn't. This is the worst CSGO story of my career, my worst writing moment of my career involved in this. But if I'm going to answer the ones that make me feel happy and look cool, we should do the ones where I learned I'm an idiot. All right, so first, you've got to remember when we're making CSGO what the landscape looks like. As people are still playing 1.6, that's god awful, ugly game they are playing, and they're protective of it. They love it. They don't want us to touch it because it's only gotten better now that we've left it alone. So that's why we first start with the CS source people, and even they're like, hey, we got our thing. It's this own weird thing. You left this alone. Leave us alone. Leave us all alone. And they really just wanted to be left alone. A lot of my job was just being like, I don't know about CS. You tell me, because I didn't. I was not, like, I played, but they knew way more than me. But so we get the character list, and it's just, I get the character list. And I don't think twice about it. It's just like, oh, these are the characters of Counter-Strike. I'm just going to write for these. But here, instead of just having one voice, be this generic voice, and these just be costumes, I'm going to add a little bit of flavor, and I'm going to go record people from these different nations, because it's all different nations. We had thought about maybe like we should like even push into that further and do some stuff there. And like if we did single player missions, like, oh, like, great. You have this moment where you're just like, the future, what does it look like? And so a lot of it is I start listening to a lot of combat footage. And I listen to combat footage across the board, right? All the sides, everything going on. And you realize that a Marine and a guy planting an IDE talk, and they're both in their 20s. They talk really similar, except one probably mentions God a little bit more. And it's hard because, like, I don't want to get religious around it because that's a sore point. I don't want to get political around it, so we try not to really touch that. But it's a lot about like spirit is religion. Like there's code words. If you go back and play and listen, like you'd be like, oh yeah, that's what that is. Okay, but equally we have these sides. And so we're going, and we're not just recording local, like a French guy to play the French guy, but like we are working with our localizers to go cast people who live in France right now and around the world. And then we're recording them. And so those are all like people from that nationality. And I was just always, and I then did not push this enough. I should have pushed this even harder. I wanted them to sprinkle in like just foreign language words, because eventually you learn all of those when you play CS, right? Because you're just like, I know what that's a sound effect more than it's a word. And so we get to the terrorist character. And it's an actor in Beirut. It's a good actor in Beirut. And we're working with a local director in Beirut. And we're up, and it's like 3, 4 a.m. I'm tired, to be clear. But his first question is, he's planting a bomb. And he's kind of like he's going on a picnic. And I'm like, a little more oomph to it. He's like, well, am I a good guy or bad guy? If you think you're a good guy, everybody on each side thinks they're the good guy. But your name's terrorist. Yeah. It was an awkward session. He was a very good sport about us being us in having a light bulb go off for all of us in that session at 3 a.m. and being like, oh yeah, we should have thought this through. It's my fault, entirely my fault. Everybody else in that session did a great job. It was awkward. Wouldn't do that again. I would think about that more, and I would think about the roles those characters play and how much we actually want to do that and how much we want to remove that weight of what's behind them instead of making them this generic thing, right? Because they're very much characters that were created of like a 13-year-old boy looking at military around the world and not adults looking at what that actually means today. So while it means something even different today, like especially the IDF, I think, well, if you've been following that conflict for a long time, clearly, I mean, they've been shooting reporters for longer than, yeah. But yeah, that was a learning experience of being more thoughtful about how much that is color that you're bringing into the game and how much that is baggage you're putting into the game, and for a game played around the world, how much you aren't thinking about those things and how they may be thought of differently, and being respectful for everybody around. So that's my fault. I mean, I didn't come up with the characters originally, but I also didn't be like, hey, we should rename these. Man, I should have. Just even renaming them would have helped. Yeah. Oh, quick note. I say about the idea of shooting reporters, clearly there's a lot more worst examples that you can use of their behavior. I was using that just as a shorthand of behavior that you don't normally see in military that's behaving to the law. So that is not slighting of the Palestinian people in any way. I do not mean it that way. That was just in my head, my shorthand of how you show that they do not act in a way that follows international law. Without, see, this is why you don't touch this stuff, because even as I talk about this, even as somebody who protested since 1987 to free Palestine, I'm bad at that too, I guess. I don't know. It's really easy for somebody to take what you say and get upset about it, because it's all very personal, very passionate, rightfully so, and more complex than one person can understand often, because of everything that comes from there and comes from the people being there, which is why it's always really hard and difficult if you were trying to actually talk to that space and talk from those people's point of view. You wouldn't have me write it. You would have somebody who, like, we were trying to get the actors from that. Yeah. I don't know if I just dug a bigger hole or a less hole.